The first-class cabin was chaos. Voices rose over each other, passengers arguing, cell phones recording every second. A woman's shrill cry cut through the noise. "Get him out of here! He doesn't belong here!" The target of her fury was a quiet 8-year-old boy named Michael Ashworth. Tears clung to his lashes as he looked around at the sea of angry adult faces. He couldn't understand how his calm flight from Los Angeles to Boston had turned into a nightmare. "I didn't do anything," he whispered. But the mob didn't listen. If you stand against injustice, hit that subscribe button and comment yes below, because what's about to happen will shock you more than any story you've ever heard. 3 hours earlier, that flight had begun like any other. The morning sun poured through the airport windows as passengers lined up to board Flight 447. Among them was little Michael Ashworth, dressed neatly in a white shirt and khakis. He carried a tablet under one arm and a backpack that looked almost too big for him. But this was no ordinary child. While other kids played games, Michael spent his time solving equations most adults couldn't begin to understand. He was flying alone to Boston, where he would become the youngest person ever inducted into the Mathematics Hall of Fame. The world already called him a prodigy. His father, Donovan Ashworth, billionaire CEO of Ashworth Technologies, had raised him to believe that knowledge and kindness mattered more than anything. When Michael found his first-class seat, 1A, he sat quietly, opened his tablet, and began writing out calculus problems. He had no idea that in just a few hours, his brilliance would mean nothing compared with the color of his skin. Across the terminal, Belle Coington, a 45-year-old marketing manager from the same company his father owned, was trying to hold her life together. After being demoted for poor results, she was desperate to prove herself. She carried 2 phones, a company phone and a secret burner phone she jokingly called her emergency line. She also carried something darker, a belief that people like Michael didn't deserve what she thought was hers. When Belle boarded and saw a black child seated, confidently in first class, resentment twisted her face. She marched down the aisle, stopped at his row, and said sharply, "You're in my seat. Move to the back where you belong." Michael looked up, startled but polite. "Ma'am, this is seat 1A. That's what my ticket says." "I don't care what that fake ticket says," she snapped, voice rising until the whole cabin could hear. "Children like you don't fly first class. I'm a business executive. I deserve this seat more than you." Heads turned. Passengers frowned. A flight attendant, Temperance Rodriguez, hurried over. "Ma'am," she said calmly, "his reservation is legitimate. Please take your seat." But Belle wasn't interested in facts. "Check his credit card. Check his ID. It's probably stolen." Michael's voice trembled. "My dad's assistant bought my ticket. I'm going to Boston for a math competition." A murmur spread through the cabin. One older man whispered, "Seems odd for a kid to fly alone in first class." Another nodded. Doubt began to spread like poison. Belle sensed it. "Exactly," she said loudly. "Something's wrong here." That was the moment the entire mood of the flight changed. An innocent child became a suspect in the eyes of people who should have known better. Minutes later, Belle pretended to calm down and buckled her seatbelt, but inside she was boiling. She needed to make the humiliation permanent. She excused herself to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at the burner phone in her hand. Her mind raced with a terrible idea. When she returned, she faked a stumble beside Michael's seat. "Oh, sorry, sweetie," she said sweetly, and in that instant slipped the burner phone deep into his backpack. Nobody noticed. 10 minutes passed. Then she began to act. "My phone!" she cried suddenly. "It's gone! My work contacts, everything!" Passengers looked over, concerned. "When did you last have it?" someone asked. "I had it right here," Belle said dramatically. "The only person near me was that boy." She pointed at Michael. The boy froze. "Ma'am, I didn't take anything." "Maybe check your bag, honey," the attendant said gently. Michael's small fingers unzipped his backpack. The phone tumbled out and hit the floor with a soft thud. Gasps filled the cabin. "There it is!" Belle screamed. "He stole it!" "I knew it!" "Unbelievable," someone muttered. "A thief!" Michael's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't! I swear I don't even know whose phone that is." but no one listened. The murmurs became a chorus of judgment. As Belle basked in her fake triumph, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a serious security incident, we'll be making an emergency landing in Denver." Passengers applauded. Belle smiled. Michael gripped his math sheets, the only thing that still made sense. Numbers couldn't lie. Numbers couldn't hate. When the plane touched down, red and blue lights flashed across the windows. 2 officers boarded. "Denver PD," one said briskly. "We're here about a theft." Belle shot up from her seat. "Officers, it's him! That boy stole my phone. Everyone saw it fall out of his bag." Michael shook his head, crying. "Please, I didn't do anything." The officers exchanged looks. One knelt to his level. "Son, we just need to ask you some questions." But then came the click of metal. Handcuffs, small ones made for juveniles. Passengers whispered approval. "Good," said an old woman. "Teach him a lesson." Michael's sobs filled the cabin. "Please call my daddy, please!" After a long hesitation, one officer sighed and dialed the number Michael recited between gasps. "Sir, this is Denver Police. We have your son, Michael Ashworth, in custody for theft on Flight 447. Something changed immediately. The officer straightened. "Yes, sir. We'll wait for you." His tone had shifted from authority to nervous respect. For 20 unbearable minutes, the boy sat crying in silence, wrists aching. Belle walked up and down the aisle, whispering to passengers, "This is what happens when parents don't teach discipline. Better he learns now before he grows up to be worse. If your blood is boiling, hit that like button, because justice was on its way. And it was coming faster than anyone imagined." Outside the window, engines roared. 3 black SUVs raced across the tarmac and screeched to a halt beside the plane. The doors opened and men in dark suits poured out. The first man who stepped forward radiated power. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and furious. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Officers, I'm Donovan Ashworth." "That's my son you have in handcuffs." The name hit the cabin like thunder. Passengers gasped. Crawford Chen turned pale. "That's the CEO of Ashworth Technologies." Belle froze. Her mind caught up a second later, and her knees almost gave out. "Mr. Ashworth, I didn't know." She couldn't even finish. Donovan strode down the aisle. "Uncuff him," he ordered. The officers obeyed instantly. Michael collapsed into his father's arms, shaking. Donovan whispered, "You're safe now, son. It's over." But it wasn't over. Not yet. From seat 3C, a quiet man stood. Everyone had forgotten him during the chaos. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a badge. "Agent Marcus Stone, Federal Air Marshal. I've been observing this entire flight." He raised his phone. "And I have everything recorded." The cabin went silent. On the screen, crystal-clear footage played. Belle pretending to stumble, sliding the phone into Michael's backpack. "That's you, Miss Coington," Marcus said flatly. "You planted evidence to frame a child. This phone was factory reset 3 days ago. No data, no contacts. A burner device purchased specifically for this purpose. You committed fraud, false reporting, and child endangerment." Belle's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't breathe. "No, he stole. It's fake." Donovan's glare froze her. "Enough." His voice was deep and cold. "My son is 8 years old. He's the youngest person ever inducted into the Mathematics Hall of Fame. And this woman racially profiled him, humiliated him, and had him arrested because she decided he didn't belong in first class." Every passenger stared at their laps, unable to meet his eyes. "And the cruel irony," Donovan continued. "She works for me," gasps again. Belle's eyes widened with horror. "You are terminated immediately," he said. "No severance, no references, and my legal team will ensure you're prosecuted for every charge possible." Belle collapsed into her seat, trembling. The officers turned toward her now. Michael, still clinging to his father, whispered through tears, "Daddy, I just wanted to solve my math problems. I don't understand why she hurt me." Those words shattered what was left of the passenger's pride. Detective Rivera finally spoke softly. "Mr. Ashworth, we're truly sorry." Donovan didn't answer. He was too busy wrapping his coat around his son's shoulders. A few minutes later, the same handcuffs that had scarred Michael's wrists were locked around Belle's. The same handcuffs that had bitten into Michael's tiny wrists now closed. Around Belle Coington's, the click echoed through the cabin, like thunder rolling through a valley. Every passenger who had once stared at the boy with suspicion now stared at the woman with horror. She lowered her head, her breath shaking as the officers lifted her from her seat. The red mark of the cuffs looked almost identical to the ones she'd demanded for an innocent child just an hour earlier. People whispered in disbelief. A man muttered, "She framed him." "She really did." Another passenger wiped tears from her eyes. How could anyone do that to a child? Even the old businessman who had supported Belle sat frozen, his mouth slightly open, shame flooding every wrinkle of his face. Michael leaned against his father's shoulder. His body trembled, not from fear anymore, but from exhaustion. Donovan smoothed his son's hair and said softly, "You're okay, son. You didn't do anything wrong." His voice was no longer ice. It was warm, protective, filled with the promise that nothing like this would ever touch his child again. Detective Rivera cleared his throat and read Belle her rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." She nodded blankly, tears starting to roll down her cheeks, the bravado long gone. When the officers escorted her toward the exit, she passed the other passengers who now avoided her eyes. One whispered, "Monster!" Another said quietly, "May God forgive you." Belle tried to speak, but no sound came out. She stumbled, her expensive heels slipping on the airplane floor, the image of a broken woman walking out of her own destruction. Outside on the tarmac, flashlights danced across the asphalt. Reporters were already gathering near the gate. The story had leaked faster than anyone could imagine. As Belle disappeared into a police car, the cabin remained silent. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed loudly. Then Donovan stood, still holding Michael's hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice calm but firm, "every single person here should remember what happened today. My son was accused, humiliated, and handcuffed because people chose to believe prejudice instead of truth. That ends now." The passengers nodded. Some cried. Others whispered apologies they knew would never be enough. The officers escorted father and son down the jet bridge where dozens of security agents waited. Donovan's corporate security team had arrived in full force, men and women in dark suits communicating over earpieces, clearing a path. The air smelled like jet fuel and cold justice. Within the hour, the story had reached the terminals. Then the phones of thousands of people, and within a day, millions. "Corporate executive frames 8-year-old math genius," one headline blared. "Turns out he's her boss's son." The footage from Agent Stone spread like wildfire. News outlets around the world played the clip on loop. Belle pretending to stumble, her hand sliding a phone into a small backpack, then her furious outburst as if she were the victim. Side by side, commentators replayed the moment Donovan Ashworth stormed into the cabin. Social media exploded. Justice for Michael trended across every platform within hours. Comments poured in by the millions. "How could anyone treat a child this way? This broke my heart. I hope she faces the full law," but amid the outrage, there was also admiration for Michael's composure, for the quiet way he had never shouted, never lashed out, only cried and begged for the truth to be heard. By the time the police processed Belle's arrest, the clip had already hit 100 million views. Donovan's PR team didn't need to spin anything. The footage spoke louder than any press release. That evening, Donovan and Michael were escorted to a private jet bound for Boston. As they boarded, Michael clutched his father's hand tighter. "Are people still mad at me?" he asked softly. "No, son," Donovan said, kneeling so their eyes met. "They're proud of you now. You showed them the truth." Michael nodded, wiping away the last of his tears. For the first time in days, he smiled. When they landed in Boston, cameras flashed like lightning along the runway, but Donovan shielded his child from them. The next morning, the world watched as Michael walked on stage at the Mathematics Hall of Fame ceremony. He looked smaller than the podium, but his presence filled the hall. Thousands stood to applaud. The sound rose like a wave and refused to stop. It lasted 1 minute, then 2, then 5. Professors, journalists, and students alike cheered for the little boy who had endured so much cruelty and still chosen to rise above it. When the applause finally faded, Michael spoke into the microphone. His voice was soft but clear. "Some people judge you before they know your heart," he said. "But math doesn't lie, and neither should people. I forgive those who hurt me because that's what makes us better." The room erupted again. Even the most stoic academics wiped their eyes. The boy's words were simple, but they carried more wisdom than all the speeches that had come before. News anchors replayed his quote for weeks. Teachers discussed it in classrooms. Social feeds overflowed with it written in gold text across black backgrounds. Meanwhile, Belle Coington sat alone in a holding cell awaiting arraignment. She had been charged with child endangerment, fraud, filing a false report, and interference with air transportation, a combination of crimes that could send her to prison for years. Her expensive suit had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit. The cameras that had once loved her polished corporate smile now captured her handcuffed and pale, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's face, the confusion, the tears, the whisper, "Please call my daddy." No apology could erase that sound. As the video of Michael's speech went viral, Belle's name became synonymous with hate. Her company email accounts were deleted, her social profiles flooded with messages of disgust. Within days, she was the most reviled figure online. Hashtags turned against her. People she had called friends publicly condemned her, but for Michael, everything was different. Overnight, he became a symbol of innocence and brilliance surviving hatred. Letters poured in from around the world. Teachers writing to say he'd inspired their students. Children sending drawings of him solving math problems with a big smile. A week later, a television anchor interviewed Donovan. "Mr. Ashworth, after everything that's happened, what comes next?" Donovan smiled faintly. "What comes next," he said, "is change." That same day, he announced a $100 million scholarship fund in his son's name, the Michael Ashworth Foundation, to help gifted minority children pursue their dreams without fear of bias or discrimination. "No child with a brilliant mind should ever be punished for who they are," he said. The initiative sparked a movement. Other corporations followed. Airlines rewrote their policies. Schools adopted new bias training programs. The federal government even introduced a bill aimed at protecting unaccompanied minors during air travel. Michael had unknowingly started a revolution. 3 weeks later, he sat in his father's office overlooking the city. Sunlight spilled across the glass walls. On the desk lay a framed picture of him receiving his medal in Boston. He looked up from a notebook filled with equations. "Dad, does everyone forgive her now?" he asked. Donovan paused. "Some will," he said. "Some won't. But forgiveness isn't for her, it's for us. It's so you can move forward." Michael nodded slowly, scribbling a new equation. "Then I forgive her," he said, smiling faintly. Donovan watched him for a long time, realizing that his son had already surpassed him, not in wealth or power, but in heart. Far away in a small courtroom, Belle sat beside her lawyer as the judge read the charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Video proof, witness statements, digital records. Her voice trembled when she entered her plea. "Guilty," the judge looked down from the bench. "You attempted to destroy a child's life out of prejudice and spite. The law will hold you accountable." When the sentence was read, 3 years in federal prison with mandatory counseling, Belle didn't cry. She only whispered, "I'm sorry," though she knew Michael would never hear it. That night, from her cell, she saw the evening news replaying footage of Michael standing on stage, his voice echoing through the television. "I forgive those who hurt me because that's what makes us better." For the first time, Belle truly understood the weight of those words. She lowered her head and whispered, "He's better than all of us." Months passed. The world moved on, but the story never faded. It became part of school discussions, diversity training, and documentaries. Michael continued his studies, diving deeper into the beauty of numbers. Donovan focused on using his influence to make corporations safer, fairer, and more humane. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the flight, Michael and his father visited the Denver airport. They stood near the same gate where everything had gone wrong. Michael looked around, the memories vivid yet distant. "Do you ever think about it?" Donovan asked. "Sometimes," Michael said. "But I like to think about what happened after more." Donovan smiled. "That's what heroes do, son. They look forward." As they walked away, people recognized them. Travelers stopped, clapping softly in respect. Michael blushed but smiled back. The same skies that had once brought him terror now carried his story across the world, a reminder that truth might bend, but it never breaks. Weeks later, Belle Coington was quietly transferred to a rehabilitation program. She spent her days reading, cleaning, and writing letters she would never send. One letter began, "To the boy I wronged, I can never take back what I did. I hope one day you understand I was lost and you showed me the truth." No one ever knew if Michael received it. But perhaps forgiveness didn't require delivery. As time passed, the internet slowly stopped talking about Belle and started celebrating Michael's brilliance again. Videos of him solving advanced equations at lightning speed gained millions of views. Interviewers called him the boy who turned hate into hope, and every time a teacher told his story to a classroom, every time a parent reminded their child that kindness matters more than judgment, a little more of the world changed. When asked in an interview what he wanted to be when he grew up, Michael laughed and said, "A mathematician who helps other kids see that they belong anywhere they dream to be." The reporter smiled. "And what would you say to the people who hurt you?" Michael paused. "I already said it," he replied softly. "I forgive them." The video reached tens of millions. Under it, people commented the same word again and again: justice. Because even in a world filled with cruelty, lies, and division, sometimes the truth wins. So if you believe truth always wins, type justice in the comments and share this story with everyone who needs a reminder that kindness is stronger than hate. Because sometimes the universe delivers exactly the justice that evil deserves.